This lecture is going to focus on the paragraph as a component part of the essay. The lecture notes are available on the web page. Remember that these are active. The links within the web page either link you to other parts of the page itself or to information outside of this web page. Our focus on the paragraph is because the paragraph, which is simply a group of sentences that develops one idea, is the essential building block of the essay. You notice here that there are different elements and that there is access within this web page to information that develops those ideas if you have questions. All of the information that I'll be presenting to you in this lecture will be available here, and when we get to the end, I'll show you where to find that. The paragraph is, in fact, a pattern that can be followed and can be manipulated to fit the writer's needs. Writing is often seen as a mysterious process, and in fact, any creative process has an element of mystery. But there are typically foundational patterns that can be identified and used. In that way, writing is somewhat like quilting. It begins with a jumble of cloth scraps, and the writer begins with a jumble of ideas. The writer chooses pieces that will work and organizes them so that they can evaluate their effectiveness. The quilter organizes by color, determining which ones fit in a group. Chooses a basic pattern. This happens to be a crazy quilt pattern. And then chooses pieces of cloth that fit into the pattern. Like quilters, writers must determine the purpose that they have. For the writer, the purpose is to inform, to speculate, or to persuade. The writer, at least tentatively, decides how best to accomplish that purpose by choosing an organizational strategy. The basic strategies of organization include chronological or time sequence, emphatic or an emphasis such as order of importance. It may be organized from simple to complex, beginning with an easily understood concept and then moving to something more difficult, or it may be organized spatially, that is, in physical space. Having determined organizational approach, the next step is the pattern itself. The basic parts of the pattern for a paragraph are the topic sentence, support, coherence, and a concluding sentence. First, the topic sentence states the main idea that will be discussed in the paragraph. The topic sentence ideally tells the reader not only the main idea, but identifies the subpoints that will be used to follow. Next, the support, the subpoints. The subpoints come both in the form of general statements and specific detail. Support, both general and specific, can be seen as evidence, which develops the idea presented in the topic sentence. It can be drawn from a variety of sources, and it can take a number of forms. The evidence can be facts, examples, reasons, personal observation, experience or opinion, quotations, concrete details. Concrete details such as or discussing a process, comparing or contrasting, using analogies, discussing cause and effect, defining terms, or even telling a story to illustrate a point. If we look at this idea and see examples, if we have the main idea of a paragraph, the idea that we know Halloween has ended because there are no costumes, pumpkins aren't jack-o'-lanterns, or candy is no longer available, we will expect the paragraph to discuss the idea of no costumes, pumpkins that are something other than jack-o'-lanterns, and candy. We'll look at the specific support for one of those. If we have the general statement, this is the very last of the Halloween candy, that's sort of an abstract idea. But then we help the reader see what that looks like. We have 2 of those unmarked toffee things in black wrapper, a pair of circus peanuts, and 1 loose Necco wafer. By using specific details, we get to see particularly what the writer is saying. We show the reader. The next thing that we include is coherence. Coherence is connecting the ideas. Strategies include repeating keywords, using synonyms, using pronouns, using sentence patterns or sentence structure to show relationship between and among ideas. The quilter uses stitches, thread, while the writer uses these kinds of thread to connect ideas. Finally, there is a concluding sentence. It returns to the main idea of the paragraph. It may do one of 2 things, or it may do a combination of those. It reviews the support by revisiting the main points, and it connects ideas or draws together, providing a context. And in some cases, it provides a transition to the next idea. This is what the basic pattern would look like. You have a topic sentence, which presents a general idea and hopefully provides a direction for the support. And then we have that general idea, the Halloween candy's gone, and specific detail, the 1 Necco wrapper. And then we connect to the next idea and support generally and specifically, and then finally return to the concluding sentence. We can simplify the form to look like this: the topic sentence, general support, specific support. If we were writing an outline, this would be a heading, a subheading, and then a secondary subheading. So the basic pattern: topic sentence, support, both general and specific, that repeated as many times as is necessary to develop the idea, and then a concluding sentence. We started out with a crazy quilt pattern. This is a pattern for a log cabin block. And this is a quilt square that has been completed using a long pattern block. This is a quilt that's been constructed using a log cabin. If you'll notice, each one of these uses the log cabin block, but it puts them together in very different ways. If you look, you can find that basic block within the pattern. And in this one, there is an irregularity, but still you have a basic log cabin block. Every paragraph has these basic components. Mine was to inform you about the fundamental pattern used in writing a paragraph. All paragraphs share a basic pattern. First, there is a foundation. That foundation is the purpose and the organization. There are particular elements. Those elements, the topic sentence, the evidence, and the concluding statement. There must be something that holds these together. I can use a definition. Coherence is the logical, orderly, aesthetically consistent relationships of parts. My definition comes from thefreedictionary.com. I want to hold it all together through the use of keywords, synonyms, pronouns. The basic pattern pieces can be found in all well-written paragraphs. If you look at the idea of coherence, my first support used the word purpose, repeated the idea of organization, used organizational to modify strategy. So you see with those bold words that there is some continuity or a thread of coherence that holds them together. And then if you'll notice in red, I move from the basic elements to my next support. So each thing is connected to the next. They serve to illustrate the logical relationship. If we want to evaluate a paragraph, there's one that I want you to look at so that you can identify the topic sentence, the support, and the strategies. We'll come back to that in just a moment. This handout is attached to the web page so that you can look at it and see whether or not you can identify the components of a paragraph. I've provided a chart so that you can see if you can identify them. Notice that evidence, these are the ways that you can provide evidence, so you can look to see if you can identify these components in the paragraphs. You can look for coherence. This provides examples of coherence. And even though there's only one chart, you can still look at the main idea, whether or not subpoints are introduced in the topic sentence, and see if you can identify the general support and the specific point support as well as the concluding idea. At the bottom of the first page is one single paragraph, and then on the second page there are three more, so that you can look at those to see if you can identify the parts. Now, without giving it all away, I will tell you that you'll also be able to find these paragraphs annotated, if you will, so that you can see whether or not you were right. If we go back to the paragraph page and we scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that you can find the evaluating paragraph handout, the first one I showed you, that's not marked here, and then you can find the review underneath it. The PowerPoint that I used is also here, and even though I've made a couple of modifications, the basic script for it is available so that you can see that as well. Paragraphs are the building blocks of an essay. If you can write a well-developed paragraph, you can write an essay. If you can write a well-developed paragraph, you can recognize one. Being able to recognize one will also help you build that skill. That's what we want to look at, because part of what we're going to do is not only build paragraphs, but deconstruct them. Deconstruct things so that we can take them apart and see how specifically they're put together. So take a few minutes to read over those handouts. See if you can identify the topic sentence, the concluding sentence. See if you can identify strategies used for coherence, so that that can help you develop that skill as well. If you have questions, please let me know.